Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. Here's the president of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, John DeNuzzo.
Welcome to Lake George Battlefield Moments. Our guest on this episode is Lauren Roberts, Saratoga County historian and chair of the Saratoga 250 Commission. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's dive into the Turning Point Women in War Symposium. I know that this May the 2nd program will be your 5th annual delivery of it. How'd the program first come about?
So the idea actually originated with a gentleman named David Bullard, who was the owner of the Marshall House. And the Marshall House is a house that's still standing today. And it was the location of where the Baroness, who is Lady Frederica Dazel, was under siege with her 3 young daughters during the siege of Saratoga in the fall of 1777. She was the wife of a German officer, and she was in the cellar with 3 daughters under the age of 5. And she later wrote her diary and letters that she had written back to Germany about her experiences of the war, is kind of like the first female war correspondent. So David had this idea to start a Women in War Symposium talking about inspired by the story of the Baroness, but talking about the roles that women played in the American Revolution. So that's where the idea originated. The Friends of the Marshall House held it the first year, and then the following year, Saratoga 250 took it over. We continued to call it Women in War, and then as we moved into the 250th years, we pivoted to calling it the Turning Point Symposium featuring women in war.
Okay, so there's more of a balance. I mean, there's the women in war aspect of it, but also supplementary or other information about the revolution in the area?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. We have a balance of stories about women, but then we're also really interested in telling local stories as well, also lesser known, or a topic that you might be familiar with, but with a new twist or new scholarship, a new perspective on it.
Okay, sounds good. Now, as always, we have a real stellar lineup of speakers. Tell us who's going to be on the program this year.
Okay, so we have 5 speakers that we're featuring this year. And of course, our head of faculty and master of ceremonies, Dr. Bruce Venter, will be there leading the discussion and all of the biographies. And we're so appreciative of him helping to find all of these speakers. We are going to have Susan Brewer there. She's the author of several books, but she's going to be speaking about the Cherry Valley Massacre, and in particular, a woman named Jane Campbell, who was a part of it. The Campbells were captured during the Cherry Valley Massacre, and she's going to talk in particular about her story. We also have Ann Clothier, who is my colleague. She works in the Saratoga County Historian's Office, lifelong living historian, and also a historian of the Loyalist perspective, especially related to women. And so she's going to be talking about some of the Royalist or Loyalist women that were following the British Army during the Saratoga campaign. We also have James L. Nelson. He is an author, the author of Benedict Arnold's Navy, the ragtag fleet that lost the Battle of Lake Champlain but won the American Revolution. And of course, this is the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Valcour Island, as Arnold enthusiasts might remember. So this is a new perspective talking about, Benedict Arnold and his central role in the Battle of Valcour Island. We're also going to have Paul Stoddy, who is the author of The Killing of Jane McCrae, an American Tragedy on the Revolutionary Frontier. And Jane McCrae is a story that probably many of your listeners are familiar with, but this is some new scholarship and a new perspective in looking at the impact of that on the campaign of 1777, but also beyond that. And then finally, we have local historian Jim Richmond, who's going to be talking about war on the Middle Line, which is the founding of a community in the Cateros Patent during the Revolutionary War. So he's talking in particular about the community on the Middle Line, which is, of course, the middle line of the Cateros Patent, and their involvement in the 1780 Loyalist raid on the town of Ballston. So those are our speakers this year. So we have a mix of people speaking about women in the war and then also local stories like Battle of Valcour. So we've got a great lineup. It's going to be a great day, and we hope that people will come out and join us, learn a little bit about the American Revolution in our own backyard.
Well, it sure is a terrific lineup. I mean, I can't think of another conference on this topic that exceeds this. I mean, maybe a few equal it. But certainly, I mean, just the topics you mentioned, particularly Jane McCrae. I mean, she's a headliner in this area, and just the whole mythology around what really happened. I'm sure this book, have you had the chance to read the book yet?
I haven't read the book yet, but I know it's won awards, and it's a different perspective. He's an art historian. He's taught fine arts. And so thinking about it, I also think thinking about it through the lens of fine arts and, of course, all of the 19th century depictions of what the killing of Jane McCrae looked like or looks like to us through these images and why it had such a continued impact, not only on the war itself, but as we move into the 1800s, it continues to be a really important story that gets passed down through the generations.
Boy, I'll say, and we have collaborated a lot. Well, Saratoga County is putting so much talent into this whole effort to commemorate the 250th. We collaborated with you in the Knox events last year, and I guess from your perspective, Lauren, is kind of like being the head honcho of the effort. How does a symposium like this continue your momentum for ultimately leading to the battles of Saratoga next year?
As a commission, we have three main goals. And the first is, increasing education about our revolutionary past. And I think symposiums like this, absolutely these lesser known stories, learning more about the local impact. And I think that's a hallmark of what you want people to take away from a milestone anniversary like this. The spotlight is on us now where everyone's thinking about the American Revolution, but learning the complexities of a conflict like this. We've all kind of heard about the generals, the major battles, but, John, as you and I know, so many smaller skirmishes and person-to-person fighting was taking place. It really was a civil war, especially in New York, and neighbor against neighbor. And we're going to be talking about that with War on the Middle Line. That's the important story and legacy that the 250th should have, a better understanding of the complexities of the American Revolution as a civil war. And so that's what I think we're trying to portray with the topics that we're picking with the symposium. And then also bringing people into the area. We're having the symposium in Schuylerville. Schuylerville is, old Saratoga. It was where the field of grounded arms were, the Saratoga, the sword surrender site. This is where Burgoyne retreated to after he lost the second battle. So we want to stay true to the roots of it as women in war, giving a different perspective there also. And we do have a lot of great conferences that are done around here, but we wanted to stand out a little bit and do something different. So that's what we're trying to maintain going forward. And this is something that we hope will go on past the 250th.
Now, I know your conferences in the past have been very well attended. Do they sell out? I mean, do people need to move fast in order to get a seat?
Yes, we absolutely require reservations for the conference. The tickets are $75 and you get breakfast, lunch, all 5 speakers. There will be exhibits there, books for sale, and it's a wonderful day. And in order to reserve one of your tickets, it's available on our website, saratoga250.com. You can get the tickets there. You can get information, the location, directions, all of that. So go check out the website, saratoga250.com, and we hope to see you there.
Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier, Saratoga is investing a lot of time, particularly that of your staff and yourself, in building the brand to make the area known for its history as well as for horse racing. So are you seeing any evidence outside our immediate area that Saratoga's Revolution history is gaining a better recognition?
Actually, we are. And I think, you and I collaborated with Knox recently that you mentioned before. These collaborative efforts have a long reach across states, more than just New England, particularly in Saratoga on Knox. Just in the past several weeks, I've been asked to speak in Vermont, in Boston, in Connecticut next week. I think people are really interested to know how the 250th is coming about. What are the plans looking like? How do you put on collaborative events? What are the stories that people are interested in? So yes, there is both outside interest, but also bringing people into the county. We have seen a pretty incredible increase in visitorship to the Saratoga National Historical Park over the last 4 years. in the measuring of analytics through our social media and our newsletters, promotion campaigns. We've seen increase in all of that. So I think the public in general has an appetite for these programs. I think they're interested to know more about the revolution. Like we talked about before, these complexities, these stories that you're like, oh, I never heard about that. I never knew that there was a loyalist raid that came down through Ballston in 1780, 3 years after the victory at Saratoga. So, these types of stories and these lesser known skirmishes, I think that's what people are really interested in. And that's what we're going to continue to try to bring forward.
You and I are both natives of this region. So, sometimes you can't see the forest for the tree. You see a lot of people, we see a lot of people at Lake George coming from the Midwest, Western U.S., Arizona, Florida, other places, and they kind of awaken in us the uniqueness of the area in terms of, you folks saw that you had this happen here. We don't have that history in Arizona. We have a different history, but not American Revolution. And I know we're seeing more of that. I suspect you are as well.
Yes. And I think the 250th, as far as a time for people to take road trips and specifically stop at Revolutionary War sites, is upon us. Mm-hmm. This is the time in a milestone anniversary. If we look back to 1976 and the bicentennial, it's when people were moving around the country visiting these Revolutionary era sites. And so now 50 years later, we have a chance for the next generation to bring them into the sites and to give new perspectives, to improve the infrastructure around the sites that we already have, and to make sure that we're telling these stories and how to connect with the people that are visiting them. If you can see yourself reflected in the history, it's not, just the great men, but it's the nitty gritty. I see a lot of people asking questions about the Army, especially like, how did they actually do these things? How did they actually feed 6,000 people in the wilderness, right? Those logistical questions that aren't always, this general saved the day and this is a marble statue. And that's, it's those intricacies that people are really interested in, the logistics and the mechanics and the everyday life of people, not only on the battlefield, but those that were residents here that had the revolution brought to them rather than making their own decision to go and be a part of it.
Well said. One more time, how do people find out more information about your symposium?
Visit our website, saratoga250.com.
Thank you, Lauren Roberts.
Thanks, John.
Our website is lakegeorgebattlefield.org. We thank you for being a part of our history.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more information or to check out the latest podcast, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and listen live on Saturday mornings at 9:40 a.m. to Lake George Battlefield Moments on 93.5 Lake FM.